Hi, welcome to my Psychic Manifesto. This is a talk show dedicated to exploring the works of Jane Roberts and the Seth Material. I'm your host, Ian Pekrul, and the person I'm going to be introducing will actually be interviewing me so I can tell my story and how the Seth Materials affected my life and my recent Psychic Manifesto. I would like to introduce Tom Leichhardt from the Modern Mystic Learning Center. Tom has been involved with putting on the last Seth conferences and has also presented at some of the California Seth conferences. Thomas, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. And first of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's exciting to be here, and I love talking about psychic phenomena. And my background is I'm an energy healer, energy worker, and also I'm a medical Qigong instructor. So that's where, a lot of the energy skill comes from medical Qigong. And I also, like you said, I've helped organize the Seth conferences and have been a speaker therein as well. And recently I've been also channeling. I've been a channeler, very much like Jane Roberts. So this is very much in my vein of interest in a big way. So I'm excited to be here.
Great, thanks. So let's get the ball rolling. I'm glad you agreed to do the interview for me. The reason I kind of wanted to do this show is I've been undergoing over the last, let's say, year or so, I've been going a really profound psychic change. I want to call it a new awareness. And Tom has a background in psychic phenomena, and I've asked him to interview me. So, Tom, you want to get the ball rolling? I'll kind of turn the show over to you.
Well, great. Yeah. So first of all, would you like to describe what is happening and also, how did it begin, right? Like what the backstory, right? Tell us what's going on with you.
Yeah, that's been kind of the difficult part, is framing this experience. It's been happening on a lot of different levels. I guess I'll start with about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I was living in Sedona, Arizona. And I noticed that I went from having, at one point, I wasn't doing anything unusual, but I started having, I had bartender hearing, like it was really good hearing, and then that bartender hearing went to like almost bionic hearing, where I could hear people from a great distance away, like I could hear my neighbors from a great distance away, and that continued to increase. I then moved from Sedona. I lived in Sedona. I spent not this past summer, but the summer of 2020 in Sedona. And during that time, I've always been interested in stuff like things like New Age, tarot cards. I've been a big fan. I found Seth Speaks at the Danbury Public Library in Danbury, Connecticut when I was 16. I've done a lot of, I practice yoga on a regular basis. So, some of these things I think have helped shift my awareness. But things really started going off the charts when I moved from Sedona. That was kind of mild stuff, just noticing like, I prefer the term, as opposed to like extrasensory perception, I like the term extended sensory perception. Mm-hmm. Meaning like I could just hear a little bit better than I should have been able to. And it was hearing people at a great distance, and I kind of, it wasn't here nor there. It was just like I went from having sort of like what I'd call from bartender hearing, meaning be able to pick out a conversation in a crowded room at a great distance. It went to something more like bionic hearing. I then moved from Sedona, Arizona to Goleta. I live in Santa Barbara now, and this is being hosted by Santa Barbara, TV Santa Barbara, but I lived in Goleta, and I noticed I was able, at one point, again, I'm doing yoga. I love doing yoga right by the ocean, and I credit some of this with going down to Goleta Beach on a regular basis, and I will set my mat up right on the shoreline. I'm sure this has done something to enhance my perception, something to extend it. And I've noticed that when I was driving around, I could hear people in other cars, and it was unpleasant stuff, like usually, "Thanks for cutting me off, a-hole." That was what I heard.
Right.
It was 70% of the time, and that was verbatim. Of course, we're on TV, so I won't say what I really heard. But hey, it was always like, "Thanks for cutting me off." It was always somebody who was angry. Occasionally, it was something nice, like, "Hey, that's a nice-looking guy." But usually, it was when I was driving and I heard And again, I could hear the people in the apartment complex. I lived near the In-N-Out Burger off Turnpike, exit 103 on the 101. I could hear people in the apartment complex across from me. And I don't understand all the details, but that's kind of what's been happening. That was the beginning of the transformation.
That's really incredible. It's what we would call clairaudient, right? It's that ability to really hear. And I like what you said, instead of extrasensory, it's like sensory extension, because we all have these senses, right? We're just learning to tune into them. So there's nothing extra about it. It's just we're awakening these natural latent abilities, which, the Seth Material, of course, pointed that out for us in a powerful way. So that's awesome. So very, very, amazing story that you're sharing with us. And I think our listeners would like to know, perhaps, like, why you? What do you feel is the bigger picture here? Like, do you feel a sense of purpose? How do you want to apply this? Are you getting a sense of a larger mission, or is this just kind of unusual phenomena that you haven't really figured out like what to do with yet?
Well, that's a good question. And that's kind of the beauty of this whole thing. I've not only clairaudient, but I'm telepathic. I'm sure people can hear at times, under the right circumstances, not only what I'm thinking, but what I'm listening to on my headphones. Sometimes I can broadcast sensations, as well as, like, at one point, like, I'd put an ice pack on my shoulder and I know the people around me can feel it. I can transmit odors. When I'm using the bathroom, I have to be really careful to do the courtesy flush so that people that are in my immediate vicinity, I don't broadcast unpleasant odors. But why is it happening to me? And that's kind of the beauty of this whole thing. If this was happening to somebody like Mother Teresa or Gandhi, or somebody who'd spent half their life shut up in a monastery or a cave over in India, it would be, oh, okay, like that kind of makes sense. Why is it happening to me? I mean, yeah, I've been persistent with I've been persistent with pursuing things like the ideas contained in the Seth Material, which is a series of books and transcripts by Jane Roberts, and that's what I want this talk show to explore. This show will be interviewing people like Barry Gellis, you, Thomas, people who are new Jane and or published books on her material, or people like you who have presented at some of the California Seth conferences and are actually working with some of these ideas. Tom, your presentation at the 2012 and 2013 Seth conference on OBE's, outer body experiences, were really amazing, and that's one of the reasons I reached out to you. Tom also has his own YouTube channel, which is a Modern Mystic Learning Center, which is phenomenal. We'll give you the link to his YouTube channel towards the end of the show. But as far as why it's happening to me, it's almost, I feel like the guy, have you ever heard a story of a guy who goes to the dentist and gets a tooth filling and then all of a sudden he's like broadcasting radio stations? I almost feel like it's something like that. Something like that has happened to me. I can't explain, and I don't know why it started happening. The only thing I can say is I've been consistently, since I was very young, like I was interested in tarot cards when I was like 12 years old. I don't just mean interested, I mean like memorizing the deck, when I was in 7th grade. I've been interested in traditional Western occultism, and normally like that kind of dropped off. Like the last 10 years or so, I've been increasingly interested in the Seth Material. Like I took a lot of classes with Rick Stacks and New Awareness Network back in New York. I spend a lot of time on Facebook with some of the groups dedicated to the Seth Material. I'll be putting up a link to my Facebook page. I hope people will want to see this and want to interact with me. And as far as a larger mission, honestly, like I just kind of want to share this with people. I'm hoping people will see this and stop me on the street and ask me about it. But that's it. Yeah, I don't know about a larger mission. I just kind of want to share my experience with people and have fun with this, and maybe connect with other people going through something similar or would like to, or I want to explore what's happening to me.
Well, great. I mean, my sense is, we're in the age of awakening, and there's going to be a lot of people, and there already are a lot of people who are awakening to these abilities. A lot of people, especially, in the older days, like you'd get locked up in mental wards and psych wards and schizophrenia, all the labels, right?
Or they'd burn you at the stake. Yeah.
or yeah, even earlier is burn you at the stake, right? But then later it was like, oh, you're insane, you belong in the asylum. And now we're starting to loosen all that up and starting to really open up as a culture. And maybe that's your mission right there, is just that you're willing to share this, where a lot of people kind of want to sweep it under the rug. I want to be normal. Why is this happening to me? Like, I just want, I don't want the attention this is going to draw. So great that you're sharing it, because then people can, look at you and say, hey, this guy's having these experiences. He's really open about it. Maybe I can talk to him about experiences I'm having. I think it's just follow your passion, act on your passion to the best of your ability. No insistence on how it's supposed to play out, and it'll fall into place. You know what I mean? But you're already on the mission, whether you know it or not, just by acting on your passion. You're putting a show together. So that's really awesome. But there is a question that I'm curious. Like, I'd love to hear how do you discover that other people, you mentioned broadcasting, you mentioned telepathy, sometimes, another channel likes to call it telepathy, but the idea of broadcasting, right? Like, what have been some experiences that really let you know that other people are picking up your thoughts, right? You've mentioned, some people were repeating some of the thoughts that you were broadcasting, right? So experiences like that, I know there's some nuts and bolts people out there, they want the hard evidence, right? So yeah, what are some experiences that let you know, like, absolutely people are picking this stuff up?
The first one I noticed, I was at a hotel room up in Carpinteria, and the walls were paper thin. They'd just thrown the place together, and you could hear somebody in the next room having a conversation in a normal tone of voice. And they could hear. It was really weird. I was sitting on my bed one night and I was thinking things, and I heard people in the room above me repeating what I was thinking out loud verbatim. And it went back and forth, and it really freaked me out. I thought they had some sort of a machine, and maybe there were, all kinds of weird thoughts went through my head. And this happened for a few days, and I kind of wrote it off. And then one day I had actually, I left California for a little while and went back to the Phoenix area. And I was in a Walmart one day. I was in Queen Creek, Arizona. I was under a tremendous period of stress. And this is when I first really blew the roof off things. I started, I'm going to call it broadcasting. I like your term telepathy and, telepathy, thinking like, again, so I'm in Queen Creek, and this is about, I'm going to say around 5 months ago. So there's a mask mandate. Imagine I'm in Walmart, I'm in Arizona, I'm having a horrible day. Unhappy with my job, tough living situation, just under a period of tremendous stress. Having a really bad day, and I start mentally, I'm keeping my mouth shut. I'm walking through Walmart to buy something in the electronics department in the back of the store. And I won't repeat what I was saying, but I was furious. And I've noticed if there's some sort of a charge behind what I'm saying, an emotional charge, right? Energy and motion. If there's some, like usually it's anger. Like remember when I first started receiving, right? I'm receiving, so I'm hearing people, let's say I cut somebody off and I'm on the highway or on the road. I hear, hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for cutting me off. Now I'm having a bad day and I'm like, man, the wheels are churning. I'm thinking all kinds of horrible things I'd never say out loud about, the people in this really conservative community I'm living with. And I have a mask on. It was so loud that there were a few people walking around near me, and I heard these women say, oh my God, did you hear what that guy just said? And I'm thinking, I know I've got my mouth shut. Like, I mean, it wasn't exactly like a brownout. I don't think I suffer from mental health issues. I think I would know even if I was really upset. I'm thinking, did I just do a Homer Simpson? Am I talking out loud when I, think I'm just mumbling to myself? That was not the case. These women were repeating on a regular basis exactly what I was thinking. Now, I had a mask on over my mouth, so I think they thought that I was actually yelling at them. Right. Talking about how closed-minded this community was, and, I'm having a bad day, so I'm projecting whatever my faults are onto them, as I tend to do. But anyway, so that was it, and it was anger. And it just, for some reason, it just started happening from there. and that was broadcasting. That was kind of broadcasting when I was angry.
Right.
And then it started happening. I don't know, something happened. There was no particular rhyme or reason to it. This was actually when I was working a lot. I had a lot of roommates, so I wasn't practicing a lot of yoga. I was under a period of tremendous stress, though, like I'm saying, and I think that stress was the catalyst. I was actually eating really good and taking care of myself, getting a lot of rest, but under a tremendous period of stress. And since then, there's been really no going back. One thing did happen, though. I was living in Queen Creek, which is south of the Phoenix area. There is one demarcation point that I wanted to talk about on this first episode. The first 2 episodes are going to be me basically introducing myself as a host for the Psychic Manifesto. The 3rd episode, I'm going to be interviewing Tom. But one demarcation point for me was I went up to Sedona, Arizona, where I had lived before, and that's when I started like gaining a lot of momentum, being able to really receive. The first time I could send was in Carpinteria. I'm living in Goleta. I was at a hotel in Carpinteria. That's when I noticed people could hear me. That's when I noticed I was able to send. It really went off the charts when I was living near Santan. I was in Santan, which is right outside Queen Creek, Arizona. I blew the doors off it for some reason, being under this tremendous period of stress. After a few weeks of this, it got to the point where it was so constant, it was embarrassing. I remember one of my roommates had a very attractive fiance, and they were sitting together on the couch, and here I am, like a healthy, lonely guy who hasn't been in a relationship for a little while, and I saw his fiance, and something went through my mind that was totally inappropriate, that you would never say out loud, and they heard me loud and clear. They almost jumped off the couch. I mean, and that's the start of what I'm going to call Tourette syndrome. I'd like to read off first off. What I went through was called something. I want to introduce the term telepathic Tourette syndrome. It has all the hallmarks of regular Tourette syndrome, echolalia, which is repeating words or phrases over and over again. This is a definition of Tourette syndrome, and this came from the Mayo Clinic website. So Tourette syndrome, this is a few of the key symptoms. Echolalia, repeating words or phrases over and over again, repeating phrases that other people have said, and now mix in telepathy, or think sort of a halo effect of energy around me reverberating through me, So, and then another sign of Tourette syndrome, and this is regular Tourette's, is coprolalia. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. This is amateur hour. Sudden outbursts of inappropriate words, especially swear words. They can cause certain social situations to be difficult for the patient and others around them. So mix in the telepathic halo effect of broadcasting my biases. And then other things, like I had a couple other symptoms of Tourette syndrome, like I was under a lot of stress, so like sometimes I would kind of open and close my mouth like a goldfish. We all have little safety valves, and some of mine were quirky hand movements, or opening and closing the mouth, or touching things. Like I have the habit of, as I walk around, I just like to kind of lightly tap things. Nothing too crazy. There are all different levels of Tourette syndrome. But so what started happening was I was in a very conservative community out in Arizona, and I was doing landscaping for a living. I worked for a AAA landscaping company with a lot of guys from Globe, which was a mining community which wasn't too far away. And I started broadcasting imagine if you had everything that went through your head was out loud. I'm thinking of like a Far Side cartoon where this guy gets fired because the guy's sitting down and he's at his desk, and he's, it's a cartoon, so everything's, appearing in a balloon above his head. And his boss walks in and goes, "Hey, you don't know we're in a car," the guy's thinking something horrible about his boss. And his boss walks in and says, "You're fired. You forgot this is a cartoon and I can see everything you're thinking." Like imagine if you're having a bad day and everything going through your head was automatically broadcast to the people around you. This is kind of what I was going through. So not only is it bad enough, I feel like I'm, the transparent man, where a lot of people, I don't know if they could always consciously hear what I was thinking, but they were certainly reacting to it. And sometimes it was people repeating verbatim what I was saying and what was going through my head. Now this turned into something that is basically Tourette syndrome, not out loud. I wasn't saying these things out loud, but again, I'm in this conservative community working with these lumberjack type guys, and I start broadcasting like, homosexual stuff, like, man, that guy's got a great butt, or like, wow, look at that butt. Now imagine going up to, a heterosexual lumberjack and saying stuff like that in front of his friends, right? Or, the guys he's working with. So like, and that's part of Tourette's. I was saying the most inappropriate things at the worst possible time. Not saying them, I'm broadcasting them. Meaning like they're coming out of me telepathically. I'm not saying these things out loud. I'll use the word broadcasting for the point of our purposes of this interview. Let's call it broadcasting. And so that was happening. It was a lot of homophobic stuff. The people in Arizona were not comfortable with this. A lot of people, I started to get threats. I caught people spitting in my food a few times. I was starting to get threats. People were threatening to do things to my car. People were threatening to do things to me. They were not ready for this in Arizona, so I decided to come back to California. I love you, California, so much. I feel so at home here. I love you, I love you, I love you. I'm not a freak out here in California. So I moved back to Santa Barbara, and instead of broadcasting, like let's say gay things, I'm starting to broadcast racial things now. So now it's, I'm broadcasting homophobic things. Whatever would cause the most tension in any given situation is what I'm broadcasting. They don't necessarily really reflect my personal beliefs. I think everyone has a bias, but whatever bias I had was being broadcast and blown out of proportion. And that's the definition of Tourette syndrome. Sometimes it was getting a noise stuck in my head. Like I'd listen to, I loved the Grateful Dead, so I'd get a song stuck in my head, or it didn't matter what I was listening to. But imagine, you've gotten a song stuck in your head before, right? Now imagine if the people around you could hear that. Imagine if they could hear that song for 2 or 3 days. That's also part of Tourette syndrome, is repeating, getting something stuck in your head. And now add in telepathy to this, I'm broadcasting. And it's not everybody all the time, but so I know that was a lot of information, and I'm kind of new to this, and this is, obviously an amateur production. It's been, therapeutic for me to talk. It's difficult to talk about this with people. By the way, I actually did put on my resume, I work at a restaurant. I did mention on my resume that I have excellent communication skills / telepathic, and they hired me. So I love, that's one of the things I love about California. Yeah, we embrace diversity out here.
Yeah, it's a very diverse state, and it's really incredible what you're going through. I've had mild experiences of these kind of situations. Sometimes it gets heightened due to certain experiences I've gone through. But yeah, so I can relate to some degree, but definitely what you're saying just seems to be kind of off the charts, right? It's just really, at level 10, whereas, other people might experience it, onesies, twosies here and there, a cute little synchronicity, or you pick up. Oftentimes I've noticed, like when people are in love relationships, right, they can pick up on the other person's thoughts, mothers to children, these kinds of things. So I think if we really look, we'll discover we all have aspects of this telepathy within us, which is great. But you're dealing with this like full tilt, and I'm sure a reason for that is going to emerge. Look at, you're already producing a show, so there's going to be something's going to come from this. So thank you for bringing this to making this part of the collective consciousness. And so I know you're a reader of Seth, so I want to take it back to Seth, since this will be a show about Seth, right? Do you have any connection, like what do you perceive as the connection? Obviously the material got you started, and it really, just reading it alone will tend to really activate your psychic abilities. But is there a favorite quote? Is there a Seth experience that you'd like to share, that you'd like to expand upon, that dovetails with your current experience?
Well, I started when I first stumbled on the Seth Material. It was in the New Age section. You know, I was about 16 years old, and I was at, like I said, I was at the Danbury Public Library in Connecticut, and I found a paperback copy of Seth Speaks, and it resonated with me the way nothing else has. I know there are other trance-channeling authors like Esther Hicks. I know you like Bashar. You know, Esther Hicks did the Abraham Material. Nothing rings my bell the way the Seth Material has. And it's one thing, I think, before Seth encourages his readers to get a grip on the understanding or the theory behind his material before you start doing some of the exercises. But I would like to go into some quotes later on. I'll give you a couple quotes on telepathy. I think Sedona is a coordination point, and I'm going to read some of Seth's. I'm going to read a quote here on coordination points.
Yeah, Sedona is a powerful, powerful vortex. You know, Mount Shasta is another one, right? So yeah, it's not a surprise that's where some of this stuff started happening for you.
You know, and there is really no beginning and no end, but in order to do this in 2 half-hour segments, I had to kind of frame my experience. So that's where. So Seth talks about, this is a quote by Seth from Seth Speaks, Chapter 5, Session 525. This is Seth. These coordinate points themselves activate the behavior of atoms and molecules as, say, for example, the sun aids the growth of plants. These coordinates activate the generating behavior of atoms and molecules and greatly encourage their cooperative abilities, their tendency to swarm, so to speak, into organizations and structural groupings. The coordinate points magnify or intensify the behavior, the latent spontaneity inherent within the properties of physical matter. Again, that was from Seth Speaks, Chapter 5. And he said has a couple other things to say about these coordination points. These coordination points also serve to give your system additional sources of energy. The law of entropy does not apply, therefore. The coordination points are actually then sources of additional energy. They only open, however, when concentrations of energy build up within your system. I would like to make the idea clearer. A physical vehicle, a spaceship, for example, could never survive that kind of exit and re-entry from your system. Seth Speaks, that's from the appendix, or session 593. And I'm kind of thinking of that movie, you know, Black Hole, where like a spaceship can't travel through a black hole. I'm convinced Sedona is one of the coordination points that Seth talks about. Tom, so we're running out of time, so this is the end of the first episode of my Psychic Manifesto. I'm your host, Ian Pekrul. Thomas is going to be back with us, and I'm going to finish up my story. So yeah, thanks for joining in, and I look forward to seeing you next time on my Psychic Manifesto.
Great, thank you for having me too, and I look forward to coming back next time.
Whisper in the darkness as the December sun goes down, breeze blowing around your feet as you stumble from the ground. The secrets in the moving dust, know why your heart still beats. The stairs leading from the house onto the sacred street.